What's up, Rockstars? Welcome to another news video. I am back on Board Game Wire. We're doing another report on CMON. There's some interesting takes here. I want to add a little bit of context to what I see out of this, because all we're getting are kind of like the facts, right? But what those facts mean, hopefully I can engage in that conversation with you guys. So I would love to hear your thoughts, obviously, in the comments down below, so we can have a discussion on what you think the future is, what you think the current situation is, whether this is good or bad, all of that. Let's go ahead and start it right now. All right, this is a quick shout out for Into the AM. They are a sponsor of the channel. Really, I just want to let you guys know that I'm sure they're having an amazing Labor Day sale that you can add 10% on top of the savings you already get in that with the link in the description below. That's my link for my channel that you guys can use to save 10%. They make amazing shirts just like this. This one actually has it's all in the back, which is kind of cool. They're amazing. They make great stuff, not just shirts. They make jeans, slacks, shorts, all sorts of great stuff. Again, that's down in the link below, or down in the description below. Use that link, save yourself an additional 10% on top of whatever Labor Day sale they're having. Okay, now that that shout out is out of the way, I want to dive into this and get kind of into the nitty gritty. So, CMON. It says, new CMON profit warning says loss could reach $8 million for the first half of 2025, almost 3 times its overall profit from the last 10 years. One thing I like about what this article did from Board Game Wire, they did a good job on actually giving a little bit of context to the numbers. But obviously they're not going to kind of talk about the industry or the company and how it was ran. So that's kind of what I'm going to be adding to this. But yeah, CMON has warned its losses for the first half of 2025. No, this is just the first half, right? Could be as high as 8 million. 6 to 8 million is actually what they're looking at here. A figure almost 3 times the size of its profits from the past 10 years combined. They're blaming falling revenues for the estimated H1 or the first half of the year losses. So I appreciate that they're adding a little bit of context, saying, hey, obviously we're not getting any money in right now. There's more on what they're trying to do, but this also doesn't talk about whether this includes like those IP sales and stuff like that. Is that on top of the revenue they did actually get in from the IP sales? How much did they make on that? I don't know, but either way, kind of crazy that it might be 8 million. It says CMON was already reeling from a more than $3 million loss last year. So it went from 3 million to now 8 million in just half of a year. I cannot stress how crazy that is. Now, they haven't said if they project H2 to be much different. I would hope so, mainly because I'm assuming no more severance packages and stuff like that, because they got rid of a lot of people. Theoretically, they are like still selling some stuff, just not the campaigns. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if they're sitting on a stack of money to pay for the delivery of all of these, or what that looks like when that goes away. If they were robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? If they didn't save enough to deliver on this campaign, but then they launched this campaign and use some of the funds there, hoping they make it up, then we do reach a point where they run out, right? That's what Mythic Games did. I don't know if CMON's going to do that, because they have like 8 to 11 to whatever many campaigns, pre-orders, stuff that they still have to fulfill. So quite a bit. But for now, it seems like they're kind of doing okay, so we'll see. It says the slowly rising profits between 2021 and 2023 all fell well short of its pre-pandemic performance. So let's go and look at this a little bit. So this is back from 2015. Back in the heyday of Kickstarter, they were making 1.8 million in profit, 1 million, 3.5 million in profit, 2 million in profit. So leading up to the COVID crisis, they were doing fantastic. They were top of the game. Everybody knew what CMON was doing. They were making more and more money. 3.5 to 2 million in profit. That's pretty impressive, right? For any company in this space, that's not bad. However, come 2019, 2020, you could see the height kind of stop, right? So almost 1 million in losses in 2019, and then almost 5 million in losses in 2020. That was when freight went crazy and everybody was having to pay way more money. And anybody who had a lot of big box miniature games, i.e. CMON, got hit the hardest, right? However, they were able to kind of weather that storm. They were doing very good before. They were able to kind of come back to profit. And as you can see, they were starting to actually make profit again. 400, 511, 745 by 2023. So they were again starting to make more. However, it's interesting, and I don't know how they judged the profit, because I don't think they're counting outstanding pledges. Does that make sense? In other words, I don't think they're sitting on, almost 3 million of cash here, right, to offset this to where they break out even or anything like that, right? I'm assuming that the profit is, this was the costs that we have, these are how much money we made, and the actual final delivery might be different, because that then led to a catastrophic 3 million loss in 2024. They started spamming campaigns, so they were launching more and more campaigns and making less and less on them. Some of it's the economy, some of it's just, CMON, oversaturating the market. So there's a lot of things here. They moved to GameFound, right? But suffice it to say, 3 million in operating loss is not good, right? And then the first half of this year, they're already at 6 to 8 million in loss, right? So my assumption, I don't think CMON was ran very well. I think it was obviously bloated. I think a lot of companies were fairly bloated in this heyday 2018 kind of area, right? Where they were just making buku's amount of money. And so, yeah, let's just spend it all, right? Which again, the industry had decades of operating fine. So I don't hold it against them for not anticipating COVID and what that would have done to the global market there. To me, that's okay. But either way, I think they were a little bit bloated. But it's kind of crazy to me that if income stops coming in, right? In other words, we can't sell anything. They have 6 to 8 million in half of a year in loss, which means they've been spending 6 to 8 million without intake of 6 to 8 million. Now, if they had a budget full of it, right? I don't know if that would show up as a loss or not. I'm not sure. I'm not an accountant, and I don't know what their accounting's doing. I know they changed accountants at one point even, right? Because they didn't like how the other accountants were handling unfulfilled campaigns. So I don't know exactly what that's here, but I would assume that the 6 to 8 million includes money that they already had. They just haven't incomed it to then deliver these campaigns. I can't see the company through payroll and benefits and some logistics and operational expenses and that sort of stuff, doing $8 million in costs of just operating a business, right? I'm assuming this is $8 million towards the campaigns that they had money for. So I don't think this is quite as bad as it may sound necessarily. What this means for the future of the company, God only knows. I don't know, right? But I don't think that they are literally negative in the bank account right now. I'm assuming the 8 million is for delivery. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know your thoughts if you think it's any different. I don't see them being able to even do that, right? Otherwise. So, but we'll see. Okay, so as I mentioned, they were selling a string of intellectual properties, including the most famous and profitable ones, Zombicide, as well as Eric Lang's designs Blood Rage and Rising Sun. So they did sell some of those. However, they've kept DC United, Superheroes, and Marvel United, Death May Die, stuff like that. So they still have some really good IP, but they certainly did sell some of their older IP to help take that in. So I suspect that the first half of 2025, if that IP has sold, which I'm assuming it has because the campaign launched for Blood Rage, I'm assuming that's included in it, right? So that's 8 million after the inject. Who knows how much it would have been before? That's crazy. However, one thing I do want to point out, one of the nice things about selling the intellectual property is, first of all, it costs them nothing now. That's a future cost at a loss of sales, right? But it helps with cash flow. Cash flow is something I'm concerned about here because you still need active money to like pay payroll and stuff like that, right? You need some kind of money coming in for that. If you have a high profit but low cash flow, that's actually super dangerous for a business, right? So they definitely need an inject of money. They still need to make money. That's why I was concerned when they said that they stopped launching campaigns. However, they do have a plan for that as well. So late last month, CMON announced that the finish line is in sight for 3 of the games on pre-order: Dark Providence, Dune War of Arrakis, Desert War, and Marvel United The Witching Hour. So if you're a backer of those, it sounds like you're pretty much guaranteed to get those. I don't think there's going to be an issue, so that's good. Rather than the large-scale miniature-heavy crowdfunding campaigns, the company has instead pivoted to releasing several small box games direct to retail, some of which are expected to make their debut at Spiel Essen in October. My one concern with this, I think it's not a bad idea, is it's often too late to diversify. Now, I don't know if maybe they still have enough ground to run, but Mythic Games tried the same thing, if you recall. They tried to quickly make some small games for retail, and it turns out nobody wanted them. First of all, they were a dangerous company to be backing it. They weren't sure that people would want to buy it because of the name on it, especially with such uncertain founding. And you can't just like rush develop a game and be like, oh yeah, this is a big hit, it's going to sell bukus on retail. So Mythic Games try to do the exact same thing that CMON's doing now. That being said, I think CMON has a bit more oomph and a little bit more running ground to where hopefully at Spiel Essen in October they can actually show these off. I remember when I was looking at several different booths in Essen Spiel when I went, and a lot of them had these like little games that they were selling that they would like sell out just because they're such good like impulse buys, because they're not too expensive. You and your kids see, yeah, let's go and grab that, and you go play that in the hotel, right? It's one of the easy, yeah, sure, why nots that actually work really well in a place like that. So I don't know what their presence at Spiel Essen is going to be. I'm assuming booths and stuff were already paid for in advance. And I suspect if they are able to sell these, that they'll make up any money that they'd spent flying down there and selling it and doing that kind of stuff. So not too concerned about that. And honestly, it certainly looks better than an empty booth section, right? We've seen that before too. Okay, the company currently estimates it will deliver 2 crowdfunding campaigns in Q4 of this year, including Deceased, a Zombicide game, which raised more than $2.5 million on Kickstarter. I am a backer of Deceased, so that is good to hear. I also did the DC Superhero United. Hopefully that gets there as well. At that point, I'm clean. I don't know where you guys are. Let me know what campaigns you're still looking to be like, hey, I backed this. So if I hear any rumblings, if I have any thoughts on it, maybe I can share them with you. Lastly, it says here, CMON has also lost several long-serving senior executives over the past few months. And honestly, I think that's great. I really do. Whoever was senior leadership here failed, right? Because obviously that's where the company is. And now, granted, they weren't let go like a lot of the other people in CMON are. The executives always get, a little bit of a nicer golden parachute. Even though they're the ones making the big decisions that led them to this point. However, I will say a little bit of benefit of the doubt. I disagree with this, but technically that 8 million maybe could have been 20 million, right? So maybe they did make a good impact there. However, 820, you're still in the negative for the second year in a row. So something happened there. Some issue happened there. Now, the people who were actually making the decisions that led to that, are they gone? I don't know. But anytime there's senior leadership changes at a company that's failing, I don't view that as a bad thing. New, fresh looks into things can only bring positive, in my opinion. Hopefully that's the case here. Hopefully whoever is brought on board now can right the ship and have this continue, at least until they deliver everything. If afterwards they kind of go away, that would still make me quite sad, just because they were such a large part of the crowdfunded board game space and modern board gaming in general when it comes to a lot of the miniature focused stuff like that. I don't think we would have Gloomhaven without Zombicide. And I don't mean that as like a direct causality. I mean that as it got enough people interested in funding chance games like Gloomhaven. And you can think Zombicide mostly for that. Really did wonders, legitimizing the industry and bringing it to where it is today, for better or worse. So, yeah, I'm okay with them changing. Hopefully, it's not rats leaving a sinking ship, right? You definitely don't want that. However, those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours. Do you think CMON has 5 years left in them? Do you think they'll even be able to deliver everything they have? Do you think their small, cheap retail games will sell and work well? Do you think they have a future at all? If CMON fails, do you think the industry will suffer for it? In which case, how? Compared to Mythic Games, compared to CMON, I think a lot of it depends on how they don't deliver. Mythic Games did it in almost the worst way possible by continuing to ask for money and then still failing to deliver. That really sucked, right? Plus, the lack of humility, and there was a whole host of stuff there, right? And maybe CMON's going to do the same thing. I don't know. So I'd love to know your thoughts. What do you think? Do you disagree with anything I said? What do you think the full year, if the first half is 8 million, what do you think the full year loss is here? And do you think that's an actual loss, or do you think that's just on the books because technically we're taking out of this nest egg fund that we have to deliver these games? Anyway, those are my thoughts. That's my opinion on it. I'd love to hear yours. If something else comes up, if you notice something that I haven't, let me know. I'll be sure to cover it for you guys as well. Guys, have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.